Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra and we're about to take a deep dive into some of the most disturbing realities we face in this fallen world. Recently, billionaire Jeffrey Epstein was arrested for alleged sex trafficking after an indictment was unsealed in New York City. And Keith Raniere, the founder of NXIVM, was found guilty on all charges, including sex trafficking. The evidence also showed that human experiments and occult rituals took place. It looks like the dominoes have begun to fall. The Church of Scientology and its leader, David Miscavige, is also facing charges of child abuse, human trafficking, and libel. In light of what's just gone down with these cases, I wanted to bring something into the open that every researcher or truth seeker has no doubt come across in their journey. I'm talking about ritual abuse and child sacrifice. This video is specifically for those who are believers in Yahweh God and his son Yahusha or Jesus Christ. Let's get started with the disclaimers for the rest of this video. If you watched my video about the 90s, then you know what style this is going to be. Likewise, if you chose not to watch my 90s video, I suggest that you also skip this one. If you are a survivor of any kind of abuse, ritual or otherwise, I would also recommend you skip this video as it might be potentially very triggering. Also, if you steer clear of horror movies, I would suggest you skip this because I will be showing clips from a couple. One last thing, I discuss a very emotional topic in a non-emotional way. However, that does not mean that I endorse, approve of, or defend any of the subjects that I talk about today. All I want is to expose our enemies so that we can fight them with knowledge, wisdom, and with the most powerful weapon of all, which is the Word of God. I'm going to assume those of you who sit through this presentation are already familiar with the topic. And today, as one of my subscribers calls it, we're going into Lucifer's playground. Ephesians 6:10 through 12. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. The reason I'm going to show you so many random clips is just to put into perspective how saturated we are in themes of cannibalism, ritualistic murder, blood drinking, and the occult. This is to add to the stack of anecdotal evidence and see that things are not just random or coincidental. Let's start with some definitions so we're all on the same page. Chapter 1. Pedophile versus pedivore. This is not the same as this. One means lover of children while the other means an eater of children. Most of these are not this, and most of this are probably these. The reason I believe the distinction is important is because there is such a visceral reaction to this buzzword that prevents the entire truth being brought forward by making us think that this is the worst crime possible and makes us think that things like ritual sacrifice are completely unimaginable. For example, this article from a site called Disclosure TV says, Stanley Kubrick said pedophiles run the world, claims Nicole Kidman. It goes on to say Nicole Kidman has been a brave speaker of truth. This could not be more false. Again, by using this gatekeeping site and a dark occultist like Kidman to reinforce the idea pedophilia is the worst thing the people running the world are into is another way of deflecting from their actual practices. Yes, this is terrible. But this is very different, carried out by a very different type of person for a very different reason. Let's define pedophile. In case you didn't know, according to The Week, pedophilia is a mental disorder characterized by recurring fantasies, urges, and sexual acts involving children 13 or younger. Okay, what causes it? Scientists really don't know. About half of all pedophiles were sexually abused themselves, studies show. Some studies suggest that those who offend have underactive or damaged frontal lobes or temporal lobes, meaning that they have less ability to control themselves. There is also sometimes a history of head injury, and there's also usually very, very low IQs.
Well, Kim Jong-un made a statement that Joe Biden is a low IQ individual. He probably is, based on his record.
Everyone here knows I'm not on the Q or Trump train. I just thought that particular insult was very calculated. Most people with destructive addictions do not want help, and every addict has an enabler. The worst type of enabler for this is the deep web, where the subculture is massive and systemic. The YouTube channel Surviving Life does a good job exposing the harsh reality of this on the deep web. Just to demystify it, the deep web simply means sites that are unindexed or encrypted, therefore ungoogleable. In my opinion, there's much more than mental illness at play here. It is demonic oppression at the core of wanting to hurt or kill children, or any human for that matter. This is bad, this is evil. And speaking of humans, this is not. Well, Not entirely. A pedivore is similar to an omnivore or a carnivore, but instead of eating plants and animals, they eat children. Specifically to maintain their health and also due to their genetic differences. And maintain their position of power in the hierarchy called Moriah, the establishment, or sometimes loosely termed the Illuminati. They practiced ancient occult blood rituals to gain favor with the Nephilim or demons, principalities, and fallen angels. Higher-up members may blackmail lower-ranking members, and the cycle continues. They believe themselves to be above the law and have a right to control those below them. So this is a serious and potentially dangerous mental disorder. This is a religion. You may be thinking that there is only one religion guilty of this, and maybe you're thinking of these people. Yes, they are a big part of it, but they're not the only ones. The origin I'm talking about are the mystery religions. This is what has ruled the entire world since before the flood and after. Secret knowledge, enlightenment, the Kabbalah, sun worship, moon worship, stellar worship, paganism, Buddhism, Hinduism, any religion that elevates the teachings of Lucifer above Yahweh gods and ultimately take their teachings or build their beliefs on the teaching of Lucifer is part of Mystery Babylon. But remember, there are two sides fighting over humanity, the Cabal and the Alliance. The beast of the sea and the beast of the earth described in Revelation chapter 13, or the black and white, the left and right hand path in magic. I've explained both of these beasts in my other videos, I'm sure you guys remember them. But as a recap, the first beast, the beast of the sea, primarily consists of the dark occultists who worship gods like Satan, Belial, Kali, Baal, and the Alliance, the second beast, who worships the light, or Lucifer, the Ascended Masters, the sun gods. The Alliance likes to think of itself as the good guy. They have programmed slaves just like the Cabal does. And both sides are complicit in hiding the truth, up until recently when WikiLeaks and then later Q decided to expose a few of the things that the Cabal has been doing for centuries, including exposing the system. But no, I don't think Q is here to render justice. Don't forget, the Alliance has just as many occulted secrets that would help humanity, but instead have sat idly by, claiming the law of non-interference and keeping the mask of being the hero, which I believe is a fancy way of saying, we're bound by prophecy, therefore we can't change the script. Otherwise, we would all have had healing chambers, maglev devices, and we'd be living in solar communities by now. Grandmaster Lewis said, the Rosicrucians were the first to have a complete outline of the nervous system and to know exactly what part of the human body was connected with every other part. You can't tell me they don't have drugs to cure every illness the Cabal has thrown at us. So many blame Yahweh God for their troubles, but very few actually consider demonic activity and the power of the fallen angels, and this fallen world that we live in, as being the culprit. In the last 20 years, children have gotten what is called Pleiadian programming. That can or has been activated, making them think that they grew up on Alcyon in the Pleiades. A survivor wrote in a book from the 1990s that this programming was actually going to be used in the grand deception of the end times. I think that's interesting because Trump has actually been tied to the Pleiades by the New Agers. And here we are in 2019. To give you an idea of what Pleiadian programming is all about, here's an excerpt from a New Age blog called the Blue Dragon Journal. Quote, along with our allies in the Galactic Federation of Light, the Syrians, the Ashtarians, the Andromedans, and the Arcturians have been observing the evolution of Earth's humanity. Obeying the law of non-interference, we've sent starseeds and walk-ins to your planet to act as yeast for the rising of consciousness and frequency of your peoples. In bringing their Christ light to the planet, these beings would ultimately reverse the fall of the planet and rise it up again into the light. Mystery Babylon. Fanfiction of the truth. Of all the options to choose from, why Orion and Pleiades? Oh right, because Lucifer can't create anything, all he can do is plagiarize. I think that's an interesting side note, but anyway, back to eating children. The public may be getting slow disclosure as far as pedophiles, but most of this video is going to focus on pedivores. Chapter 2. Pizza Media and Pedo Symbols. If you're new or just need a reminder, I've left a link to a graphic of the whole web and how everything links together in the description below. This all broke open in the fall of 2016 when John Podesta's emails were leaked by WikiLeaks. Around the same time, there were a bunch of random pizza references all over the place, even showing up on children's clothes and purses. Take for example this Reddit post. No one eats pizza for Thanksgiving. A stand-up comedy show. Then this new at the time episode of The Middle aired with a very strange line written in.
You're gonna love our pizza.
This episode of a show called The Librarians that aired on December 11th of 2016.
Remember how we got here? Pizza.
There was pizza. I remember the anchovies.
I also apologize for the terrible quality that this was all filmed on my phone. On December 20th, a chef wearing a hat that had a slice of pizza on it.
Classic French dessert out of your Pizza Hut, but it's fabulous.
Now, this is nothing new. It's being revealed, yes, but the practice of eating children is as ancient as it gets. The elite have always been obsessed with eternal life, and eating the energy of the young keeps them young forever, allegedly. Historically, Elizabeth Bathory was estimated to have killed over 650 young girls and bathed in their blood to remain youthful. Our media is literally saturated in themes of cannibalism. These commercials are geared towards children.
Coochie coo! He so has your peanut butter.
Well, he's got your jelly.
Time for a feeding. Ah, damn it.
Snapple tastes just like us apples. How do you know what we taste like?
Remember when we were lost in the wilderness? 3 went in, 2 came out.
Oh. Other than that, pretty fun trip.
Snapple tastes just like fruit, but Snapple.
The hazelnut spread, M&M spokes candy. Oh my. What? You ate the new spokes candy?
Not all of him. Kid in Africa, Shirley played the cannibal civilizing Christian missionary Madame Cradlebait. During a raid, she is captured and stuck in a cliché cooking pot.
In a Christmas episode from 2016 of Bob's Burgers, there's a joke about human sacrifice.
Nothing weird, he said, which is troubling.
Ah, it's definitely a human sacrifice party. You're getting sacrificed.
Oh, Bobby'd be great at getting sacrificed.
Here's a clip from a show called The Shivering Truth on Adult Swim. They aired a show called Mostly for Millennials on July 3rd of 2018.
Oh, you're my energy. My energy.
Adult Swim in itself is extremely questionable and has a reputation of hiring problematic artists. They also showed a pilot of a show called Trap Universe with flashing subliminal messages. The creator of this cartoon has a colorful Instagram, to say the least. February 15th, an episode of Dr. Phil aired about a woman who had lost touch with reality.
Kelly, she'll talk in circles. She would go on Facebook. She would talk about celebrities, and she would say, in order to be famous, you had to sell your soul to the devil and eat babies. She tells me that I'm being controlled by my mom. I feel...
Dr. Phil being either a programmer or handler, I cannot say, but he is the 11th cousin 3 times removed from George H.W. Bush himself, and is instrumental in convincing the world things like mind control do not exist. Saturday Night Live just had a skit about this.
You don't know how good someone's music really is until you find out they're a pedophile. Like, I don't need to ever see a Kevin Spacey movie again. But if the CEO of Swisher Sweets turns out to be a cannibal, I can't just change my whole life.
Pete Davidson has joked about this before.
I say no because if it was LA, I would buy it. But I don't think people eating people here.
I think it's the opposite.
You think it's the opposite?
I think New York's got some crazy, seedy stuff.
No, they'll cut your head off here, but out there, they'll cut it off and eat it. That's Hollywood.
I know.
Everyone knows about Hollywood's elite hanging around programmer Marina Abramovich and her spirit cooking, about how to make a cut in the middle finger and eat the pain. One thing I want to point out is in the occult, the middle finger is actually linked to Saturn and rebellion. Saturn being another name for Kronos, which is also Moloch. Look at these symbols. Girl lover, little boy lover, child lover. These are everywhere, as I'm sure you've begun to notice. The representative Sheila Jackson Lee wearing a pedophile symbol for boy lover as a ring. Q says she's part of the club. Former Disney exec Michael Laney was sentenced to more than 6 years in prison for sexually abusing a 7-year-old girl. And Gloria Vanderbilt's ritual abuse-laden art collection. Art collections in general are usually highly problematic. Look at Tony Podesta's art. This is called the Arch of Hysteria. It depicts a similar scene as the one in I'm Like a Bird by Nelly Furtado, as well as this scene in a movie called The Neon Demon, which is the same pose again as in this video by Billie Eilish. Her entire video looks identical to one by Brendan Urie. Side note, at a recent concert, Brendan Urie sported this gold jacket covered in pedophile symbols. Back to Billie. The lyrics of this song are very dark, and she explains it away by saying it's written by the perspective of a monster under the bed. Do you buy that? 'Cause I don't. Of course, all I see is a programmed mind control victim. She's signed to Interscope. This is Interscope's logo. This is Brendan Urie's jacket. This is Voodoo Donuts.
The donut gods have put a spell on me and summoned me to Portland, Oregon to feast on the ultimate visceral doughy experience, a voodoo donut.
Another odd connection is in this February 4th, 2009 episode of Man vs. Food, the host Adam Richman is wearing a shirt of another questionable restaurant called Vortex in Atlanta. Alright, Voodoo, how did you guys get started? Do you love baking?
The voodoo gods called us a long time ago and said that Portland, Oregon needed a nice spiritual hub to feed the masses. And so we listened to the voodoo gods and we have created its own little shrine. And we sell the donuts. We sell the donuts.
Okay, so seems you just meandered into a wildly successful business. Surely another $1 million business with overtones of pedivorism can't exist, right?
There's good reason for my glistening skin. And how I shine. And how my pores are so clean and clear. I eat Little Baby's ice cream.
Pete Angevine created Little Baby's Ice Cream in Philadelphia 8 years ago, even though he knew nothing about making ice cream or creating a company. He was a musician.
A shop that's known for their crazy flavors. Little Baby's has a modern take on ice cream in Philly.
Isaac.
Pete.
I have heard about you all the way on the West Coast. I have come here to meet you, and I want to hear what everyone's been hyping up.
We obviously have a real penchant for the absurd and the weird. Little Babies visually is very inspired by set design for Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Huge fan.
Gary Panter and Wayne White, total art heroes. In fact, just last month, our pizza ice cream was featured on Pee-wee's blog.
Nice.
Which basically validated my entire adult life.
That's it, yeah.
Pee-wee Herman isn't exactly a wonderful role model. This is what you see when you go to Pee-wee's blog. Their Instagram is filled with symbolism as well. Okay, hiding in plain sight is a common tactic. Here, let Taylor explain.
I think the best messages are cryptic ones. So, Easter eggs can be left on clothing or jewelry. This is one of my favorite ways to do this because you wear something that foreshadows something else, and people don't really usually find out this one immediately, but they know you're probably sending a message. They'll figure it out in time. Lots of examples of this exist over the history of my career, which I hope they have put near my face. It's encoding messages into the lyrics. Why not capitalize random letters and see if the fans figure out that if you take all the random letters and you put them together, it spells out like little codes, secret messages.
In August of 2018, Franklin Graham tweeted pictures of himself at Voodoo Donuts in Portland, Oregon that said, "Take a look at these killer donuts." Survivors of satanic ritual abuse like Fiona Burnett, the author of this article, know that this particular location has been implicated as a hub for child sex trafficking. Quote, "If the Voodoo Donut menu is not inappropriate enough for Billy Graham's worshippers, let's take a look at the restaurant sign that Franklin Graham posed in front of. Notice the trademark swirl. The name Voodoo Donut itself is kind of anti-Christian. Christians are traditionally against voodoo, witchcraft, and evil stuff. At best, it certainly seems odd to me that such a high-profile Protestant figure would boast on social media that he dined at a venue named Voodoo, which sold donuts named after sexual acts and Satanism. Things Protestant ministers are supposed to publicly oppose, right?" Fiona retweeted Franklin's picture along with various accusations against him and his father, 33rd-degree brother man Billy Graham. The next day, without any explanation or rebuttal, Franklin Graham quietly deleted his posts. For Halloween, they made child-sized coffins. A voodoo location is actually in Disney Springs. I find this really odd considering the lengths that Disney goes to uphold their wholesome image. They even relegate darker films like The Nightmare Before Christmas to their other studios like Touchstone. However, there is a short animation called Bimbo's Initiation from the 1930s that depicts the process of mind control. I've left a link to the full video in the description. I mention this because it's none other than Mickey Mouse that throws the initiate into the rituals. Side note, The Wizard of Oz is heavily used in mind control and ritual abuse, and the song The Wizard and I from the musical Wicked reads like an ode to a programmer, from the victim. The whole ideal for the programmer is that they know everything inside and out of their victim, that they literally are like a god who has created his own perfect human. Like a coder who created an intelligent video game character. Dr. Frankenstein who made the perfect monster, and so on. Pizza is a notorious symbol we see everywhere, as are red shoes, and sometimes red pizza shoes. Anyway, the coding has a lot to do with food, and what do you do with food? You eat it. Also, I think it's interesting that the only thing you really think of associated with a furnace or a wood-fired oven is a pizza, reminiscent of Moloch. Archived posts from James Elefantis, the owner of Comet, always features suggestive images and comments. But one comment from a user called Keck Magic says, quote, "Keck has cursed the followers of Moloch. Chatelet." If you've watched my video, The Cult of Keck, then you know what a fascinating link this is. Sorry about the captions, they're auto-generated, but the sound quality is poor, so they may help.
That image signifies something called boy love. The pizza place next door to Comet Ping Pong Pizza, Besta Pizza, well, this was their logo until only a few weeks ago. Clearly, you can see that the Besta logo actually contains the same image, I'm going to show you again, as that boy lover image. Interestingly, after Pizzagate investigators pointed this out, Besta Pizza changed their logo, and there it is now. They've removed the triangle.
While Besta Pizza removed the symbol from their logo, I find it interesting that successful fast food chains have actually added these symbols to their logos. The power pyramid is all about money, because money and power covers all their sins. Big banks answer to central banks answer to international central banks, those answer to the Bank of International Settlements, and so on. Today's giants are still titans, money moguls, and their wealth shows how much power they have over us. But think of it this way, in the days of Noah, the giants were the ones who had power over the humans. We couldn't go up against them easily. Today, if your height was equivalent to your wealth, how tall would you be? Oxfam International created the infographic that shows just how 10 main corporations manufacture the majority of what's on our shelves at the market. Some of these brands have logos like this. Why? Well, one possible reason would be because these companies fund a large portion of this underground. A massive gatekeeper to the mainstream masses learning anything is the site Snopes.com. They attempt to belittle and disprove anything that goes against the mainstream narrative by setting up red herrings or paper tigers and then destroying their own fictitious argument, instead of addressing the actual matter. The owners have also been arrested on charges of fraud and corruption. Joe M. on Twitter said, "Soviet cabal invented the concept of fact-checking during the Bolshevik Revolution as a weapon of propaganda war to suppress truth coming from the West. They recycled the old trick again to fight Trump and call it Snopes." Donald Trump first mentioned Pizzagate in 2011.
Because I was watching between Pizzagate and Anthony Weinergate.
A Q post from March 10th, 2018 says, "Hollywood is filled with them. Models. Find the loudest voices. Brainwashed. Who was adopted? Who was born in? They thought the sheep would follow the stars." The loudest voices are often brainwashed or programmed. Marilyn Monroe was adopted. Who was born in? Katy Perry. Her father is a pastor who wears Luciferian necklaces and rings. Nicole Kidman was also born in. Her father, Anthony, recently committed suicide after Fiona Burnett testified about his crimes against children in Australia. One reason celebrity programs are called slaves is because nearly 90% of what Americans read, watch, and listen to is controlled by only 6 media companies. Hollywood is one massive programming center, but it hardly stands alone. The network is comprised of all the various organizations carrying out mind control, such as the CIA, the Catholic Church, NASA, the Church of Satan, the Church of Scientology, the country music industry, professional sports, the Mormon Church, Mossad, and so on. Many falsely believe that the Vatican is at the top of the food chain, so to speak. But that's just one piece of it. The dark occult priest class is at the core of all Luciferian religious holy cities, including Jerusalem and Mecca, among others. PBS's Frontline described the conglomerates that determine what information is distributed to the masses as a web of business relationships that now defines America's media and culture. According to public analysis from Bloomberg, The largest holder in Core Civic is Vanguard Group, Incorporated. Core Civic is a company that owns and manages private prisons and detention centers. Interestingly enough, Vanguard also holds a considerable stake in the media giants determining this country's culture. The #1 holder of both Viacom and Time Warner is a company called BlackRock. BlackRock is the second largest holder in Core Civic, second only to Vanguard. There are many other startling overlaps in private prison mass media ownership, but two underlying facts become very clear quickly. BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, and State Street effectively control the US economy as well as much of the world. The people who own the media are the same people who own private prisons. So celebrities are essentially prisoners as well as the people who consume their content. My point here is what you see and hear is not coincidental at all. Anyone who believes they can be rich and famous when they don't come from the right bloodline has sadly bought the myth that is constantly perpetuated in keeping people invested in this twisted version of royalty.
Amidst all of these flashing lights, I pray the fame won't take my
Like I've always said, if you can't join them, beat them. The artist Mark Ryden is horrifically obsessed with creating occult art like this, and like this. He also hexed Donald Trump and wished everyone a happy Saturnalia. Mark Parker, the CEO of Nike, collects artwork by Mark Ryden. He's also on the board of directors at Disney. Modern art can definitely be used to launder money, also to ship illegal things overseas, because rare or expensive art does not have to go through the same customs inspections. This is one way the trafficking of children is accomplished. It's not just weird occult artists either, it's all out in the open. For example, Refinery 29, which is an American digital media and entertainment company focused on young women, had an art installation called 29 Rooms. Oh, so that's why one of the rooms is literally covered in pedophile symbols? Back to models. Terry Richardson, known as one of the most famous photographers in the world, or maybe most infamous, he worked with Obama, who flew $65,000 worth of hot dogs into the White House from Chicago, Woody Allen, the man that married his adopted daughter, as well as many others. Some speculate he himself is a handler, and I would not disagree with that. He's photographed basically everyone in Hollywood, such as Macaulay Culkin, who was a member of Pizza Underground and is friends with Seth Green. Twitter is on top of all this stuff if you're interested. I find the Seth Green connection interesting since Seth and Macaulay were child actors the same time as Jonathan Brandis, who was in the film It with Seth Green and committed suicide. The remake of It is an allegory for the Nephilim who eat children, the people who live underground, preying off the people who live above it. Did Jonathan really commit suicide, or did something else happen? Artists are notoriously at the center of this controversy, and for good reason. Remember John Podesta's smocking? It's reminiscent of a scene from Moana of a giant crab that glows in the dark and wants to eat the humans. The History Channel is owned by A&E, which is a joint venture between Hearst Communications and the Disney Media Networks division of the Walt Disney Company.
DeLong walked away from stardom and dedicated himself to disclosing what he believes is the truth about UFOs. DeLong says he was able to secure a meeting with a high-level aerospace executive with deep connections to the military. Soon, DeLong was covertly communicating with powerful people, including General William McCaslin, the former head of a billion-dollar Air Force research lab, and John Podesta, the former presidential advisor who once said his biggest regret in the White House was not releasing the government's UFO files.
That's the thing, these pedivores are telling everyone to look up, not down. The underground is where the real monsters live. One only needs to research the correlation between ritual abuse and abductions to see that there is a startling connection to be made. Here's where we're going to get into the darker chapters of this video, as I talk a little bit more about rituals, ritual abuse, programmed slaves, the establishment and the religions of evil at the very core of our world. Lucifer's kingdom is the direct inversion of Yahweh's kingdom. These blood sacrifices are a blasphemy to Christ's atonement. I won't go into detail on the origins of MKUltra and mind control, but if you don't know, I highly suggest researching Operation Paperclip when these people came over after World War II and started things like the CIA and NASA. Chapter 3. Desensitizing Death. Ping pong is a common symbol used by pedivores.
Plus, I love playing ping pong. So,
did you know that Susan Sarandon has her very own ping pong club? Its name is Spin, which in itself screams of ritual abuse because spinning altars are some of the first altars to be created. This is a photo of their Instagram, which I could not find a link to for like they said, but how many normal places do you see referencing Egypt and Babylon? No coincidences. There is a poster found in Comet Ping Pong by artist Kim Noble. She was interviewed by Vice News.
Scream if you think God is not real.
She has dissociative identity disorder, and one of her altars, or the parts in her system, created the piece. The basis for the success of the Monarch mind control programming is that different personalities or personality parts called altars can be created who do not know each other, but who can take the body at different times.
That's the Kabbalah one that she does, you see. I think that's Hebrew, I don't know.
Again, here's a tie to the occult Kabbalah that the front altar Kim herself does not know anything about. One example of magic being at the core of their success was David Bowie, who was heavily influenced by Kabbalah. The theme of his final album Black Star mirrors Elvis's song Black Star. Speaking of victims, the cultural climate is a little bit strange right now after the advent of the Me Too movement, which is all about believing victims of sexual assault. See, like the Huffington Post said, it's time to start believing victims of... except when it involves children and high-level Luciferians, and then it's a hoax.
just when you might be thinking, they're running out of crazy places to shoot, here we are in Northwest Washington, D.C. to visit a joint that's serving up ping pong and pizza. This is Comet Ping Pong.
On February 9th of 2019, the Church of Satan tweeted this, saying, quote, "Who wants to go get some pizza on National Pizza Day?" This is obviously making a joke about the allegations around Comet Pizza. The reason this is so frustrating is because if any organization were to call for an immediate investigation into these allegations, it would be the Church of Satan, based on their very own 11 satanic rules of the earth, where number 9 explicitly states, "Do not harm little children." In reality, they're just a bunch of cowards hiding behind an exoteric front. Another satanic group whose literature suggests human sacrifice is the Order of the Nine Angles. There's also an alleged cannibal club in LA, even though it's widely believed to be a hoax. What I find interesting is an artist that has been linked to it is named Diamanda Galas. In an interview with MTV, she's asked, "Are you interested in ritual magic?" "In order to perform the way I do, I must be," she replies. This is what she sounds like. Prepare your ears, folks. While the Cannibal Club may be fake, another website got a lot of attention for selling leather goods made from human skin. The site has since been scrubbed, but there's an archived version still available. In the movie The House That Jack Built about a serial killer, he made a wallet from one of his victims, the same way that real-life killer Ed Gein made lampshades, gloves, masks, and other things from his victims. I've touched on this film before, but it hardly stands alone. It's about a serial killer who murders his victims, including his wife and children, in bizarre ways. The problem I have with this is that none of it is just a movie. The name alone is based on an old nursery rhyme, which are almost always used in scripts in ritual mind control programming. In the movie, the way he kills his victims are all ways in which humans are ritually sacrificed by various groups, such as hunting children, making leather out of human skin, and storing bodies in freezers. The occult symbolism is also very strong. Everywhere we turn is saturated in mystery religions. This is to desensitize the public to the horrors that are actually happening and keep them at arm's length. Another satanic promo piece disguised as a movie is called Suspiria.
In Berlin, the Marcos Dance Academy is actually secretly run by a coven of powerful witches. Their leader, Mother Marcos, most likely several hundred years old, is in need of a new body. So through the school, the matrons, including Madame Blanc, select certain members to become the new physical body for Marcos.
This illustrates the nature of the Grand Dame. Generational spirits or demons are passed on from one member of the hierarchy to the next. Another notorious movie is called a Serbian film. The uncut version shows depictions of what us in the research community know happens all too often to children and babies, yet the majority of people claim this film to be among the most disturbing ever made. Like it's some sort of badge to sit through this, when it pales in comparison to the things that are actually happening every day. I've always believed that there is no horror movie scarier than reality. The movie Hostel Part 2 is about a hostel turned nightmare where art students are sold to the highest bidder to be killed slowly. One scene depicts a woman hanging upside down who is then stabbed to death by another woman who sits in a bathtub and drinks her blood. What truly baffles me is the sheer volume of people willing and eager to consume this content. Now, people who have never dealt with spiritual warfare have an idea about how demons work. They possess people and make them act all outwardly crazy, and that's just not true. Sure, possession can certainly turn people into monsters, but the majority of demonic activity is more of an oppression. Negative entities come through gateways and start to influence a person's life. Occult activities act as permission for these entities to operate. Then things like plans, marriages, relationships, they all start to fall apart. That is why it's important to be careful what we passively consume every day, whether it be in our food or in our media, what we think and what we say, because there is a war going on and it is a war for your soul.
Welcome to Nerve, a game like Truth or Dare. Watchers pay to watch, players play to win. Are you a watcher or a player?
In the movie Nerve, people called watchers dictate dares to the players. It gets more and more dangerous as the game goes on. While this is not in any way a horror film, what if I told you a horrific version of something similar does exist? This is McCamey Manor. It's a non-profit extreme haunted house specializing in personalized nightmares run by Russ McCamey.
I'm just Russ.
Let's put on a show, everybody! Yes, put on the play!
However, it's less haunted house and more elective torture. The volunteer actors are hired by Russ to legally torture the victim. Mind you, they do not have medical training. They're there to break you until Russ decides you've had enough. It's meant to break you physically and physiologically. People voluntarily sign up, and I am talking like thousands of people are on a waiting list. But the process is very long, and some reports say that Russ and his gang actually kidnap you prior to signing all of the waivers as part of the experience. The victims are subject to acts including but not limited to beating, choking, cutting, ingestion of foreign substances, forced vomiting, and waterboarding. So, like, great for date night. The ordeals are filmed and then heavily edited, then released only if the victim agrees that everything was consensual. If they don't say that everything was voluntary, then the footage is never released. There are reports that the cops are very well aware of this operation, but they don't do anything because it operates in a legal gray area. Russ also uses very specific cameras. Typically, they're used for live streaming.
I just died, dude.
Are you okay?
I don't know. Hey,
All right.
I'm serious. Like, I can't do that again, man. I'll die.
You got it? What's the problem? Get him out then. Get him out. Get him out. Tell me.
I just lost all sense of reality right now.
Why? Is it just that scary here?
Like, I just lost all sense of reality. I don't know where I'm at.
But you do now.
I do now. Kind of.
The type of abuse and trauma in some ways is similar to that of people who have been ritually abused. Tactics meant to split the mind. So what is the reason for something like this to exist? Apparently, it has to do with live stream betting. The live streams are broadcast to an underground betting network in Las Vegas.
Tell the people right now. Tell them they're watching. Tell Vegas right now.
This was entirely
Look at me.
This is entirely more than I thought it was going to be.
Now, none of this really seems to make sense to me. So, here's my opinion. Whoever is paying for these people to get tortured to the point of near death needs adrenaline. They harvest this fear energy. I mean, you guys remember in Monsters, Inc.? The screams of children generate energy that can be captured. The same way factory farms traumatize and terrorize the cattle so that the meat is full of adrenaline, these videos generate adrenaline. This leads me to adrenochrome.
Adrenochrome.
Adrenochrome?
They make sure the child is terrified, so they pump the adrenaline through the blood. And they like to drink that blood, and they're addicted to adrenaline, a lot of them. So there's actually a science, when you analyse it, there's a science behind their madness.
Adrenochrome is like LSD or mescaline, but much stronger. It comes from adrenal glands and the brainstem of humans, but it can also be synthesized from animals like sheep. The symbol used in Donate Life's logo is probably not a coincidence, nor the fact that they partner with an organization called Osiris Therapeutics. For years, Planned Parenthood has been under attack after many undercover videos came out showing they sell aborted fetal body parts.
It's perhaps going to be even more shocking. You're going to see evidence in it of how Planned Parenthood is actually willing to sell fully intact fetuses to buyers of aborted fetal tissue.
On June 20th of 2019, the court ruled that Donald Trump can defund Planned Parenthood and cut $60 million in taxpayer funding. Remember, what you see on the surface is never the whole story. After all, Trump has been on a mission to stop all types of human trafficking, and Q has attempted to bring awareness to what the dark occultists have been up to since day one. Because it's my opinion that Trump is part of the false prophet system and a light Luciferian himself, this awareness makes perfect sense. Trump and the Alliance are performing mental alchemy. They're following the Hermetic principle of the universe being mental, or the idea we create our own reality. Understanding lead for what it is as a means to change it into something more valuable, like gold. Understanding the Cabal for what they've done and using that disgust to usher in a golden age. Problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialectic. Q aligning itself with Christianity is very poignant, because that is the very people the second beast system deceives. Tarot is, of course, just another Kabbalistic tool. The tarot is used for its symbology. While all decks are different, they carry a lot of the same themes, like Crowley's Thoth deck has Kabbalistic attributes on the cards and is defined in terms related to the Tree of Life, down to the colors on the card. The tarot is a method of initiation made up of these symbols which correspond to certain attributes. Any deck you have will be able to build a Kabbalistic Tree of Life. This Twitter post shows how 22 major arcana trump cards correspond to years beginning in year 2000. Trump cards figured into The Economist in 2017 as well, with Trump as the Judgment card. Here, Judgment is to be played in 2020, followed by, in this person's opinion, Evil defeated worldwide by 2021. In this Luciferian world of polarity, there is light and dark, the dark being the dark occultists, and the light being the light Luciferians. No, the polar opposite of dark is not the light of Yahweh God. For Yahweh is not in a polar dichotomy at all. He is separated from that dichotomy altogether and is a completely different form of light. 1 John 1:5 says that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. Again, this is a massive industry that isn't relegated to organizations like... One example is a Twitter thread focusing on a tweet from Donald Trump from 2012 that misspelled the word children. They discovered a company called Alibaba Express. The world's largest retailer and e-commerce company also misspells the word children. And guess what else it sells? Adrenochrome. The thread goes on to point out too many coincidences for this misspelling not to be code for something else. An immortality serum is even a card in the Illuminati card game. In old books on the occult, there is still a recipe for something called flying ointment. The ointment produces a sensation of flight, or an out-of-body experience. It's made up of various substances, some of which are hallucinogenic or poisonous, like belladonna, aconite, deadly nightshade, and then the herbs are mixed in an oil. One oil suggested in traditional recipes is baby fat. How else do you obtain baby fat if you don't cook a baby? While modern practitioners of witchcraft say this is nothing but lore, there might be a bit of truth to the recipe. After all, the central book of Thelema, called the Book of Law, has a recipe for something called the Cake of Light. Of course, it includes your usual cake baking ingredients like flour and honey. There's also something called ingredient X. It says, quote, "The best blood is of the moon," or monthly meaning menstrual blood, then the fresh blood of a child. Sanctum is another example of a secretive club that's exoterically a sex cult, but esoterically appears to be about something much darker. It says, quote, "The last many months I am a caterpillar in a cocoon, and every experience is bringing me closer to making my way out into the same world I was in before, but now with wings to take flight with a similar vision, but a different perspective. The masquerade on July 28th will be the embryo of a new philosophy grown to an infant that can be interacted with. This child will carry with it the wisdom of the last 5 years of its prior incarnation, but with a different purpose. I find the double meanings disturbing. Membership begins at $10,000 annually and goes up to $1 million. Swimming pools also figure into the imagery. Pools and bathtubs are very easy to clean. Tony Podesta's art collection has been at the center of controversy and includes images with pools. In the movie The Neon Demon, the main character is killed when she falls into an empty swimming pool. It gets more bizarre when the other model eats her eyeball. The same idea is shown in the Tim Burton film Mrs. Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
Baron discovered that by consuming the eyes of other peculiars, especially children, he began to change.
Now, eating the eyes means that you're high up in the hierarchy of Satanism, and you pluck the eyes out of a human and eat them.
One known villain to humanity is the Australian demon in a human suit named Peter Scully. He was known for his work in a company called No Limits Fun, as a director of snuff films featuring children, which were distributed on the deep web. He has since been arrested, but I am sad to report that No Limits Fun is still active because he was only one part of it. Computer security expert Gareth Owen found in a report last year that 80% of deep web activity has something to do with this. I would go even further and include this. Since the deep web makes it so easy to obtain things like adrenochrome, human organs, weapons, actual humans, and other drugs, Scully created his videos for very wealthy individuals, which should give you a clue as to who consumes this content. McCamey Manor, Sanctum, No Limits Fun, all cater to extremely wealthy yet anonymous individuals. Notice the difference between fame and riches and wealth and anonymity. A video linked to Scully is an urban legend called Dafu Love. Ron Swanson of Surviving Life reported on this video.
Now, after this footage surfaced on the deep web, people lost their frickin' minds. But luckily, this was another huge hoax. Dafu Love was another video in Peter Scully's series. That footage, luckily, came from a film called American Guinea Pig Blood, Bouquet of Blood and Gore.
But there is something I want to point out that is kind of strange. The masks the men wear. They're similar to the demons in an anime called The Promised Neverland. The entire premise of the show is about children in an orphanage who discover they're actually in a human farm, and instead of being adopted, they're sold as meat. The higher IQ children get to live longer than others. The entire show portrays this human sacrifice system overseen by a Mother of Darkness or Grand Dame. Literal demons are the ones who procure the children. Notice these demons indeed have 6 fingers. The Nephilim were described as having 6 fingers on each hand in 1 Chronicles 20, verses 6 through 8. The biggest problem I have with this is that Luciferians hide the truth in places like children's shows and cartoons, so that no one believes you when you bring up things like human sacrifice, since the majority of society is already primed to believe that it's fantasy, when it is not. Those following the cue boards know exactly what I mean. Ritual abuse survivor and mind control victim Katie Groves recounts something that she had to do under mind control.
There was an infant who we were told was our own, but they made us carve out her brain through the soft part of her head with an ice cream scoop.
I eat little baby's ice cream.
Chapter 4. Ritualistic Reality. Most mind control victims endure trauma to create alters to become who we know today, but some were born into accepting ritual abuse as part of their life. These are the people who are slightly human, meaning that their blood is different from ours and they have fallen DNA, and are the descendants of Nephilim. Knowing what these entities are capable of,
I'm Nicole Kidman, and I am going to eat a 4-course meal of bugs.
this is not impressive at all. When a child inside the hierarchy establishment is in their teens, they do the Kabbalistic Tree of Life pathworking. The pathworking rituals are severe and meant to split the mind. Luciferians worship various ancient pagan gods, including Lucifer, Moloch, Baal, Dagon, Imhotep, Horus, Isis, Anubis, and Set. Fiona Burnett describes Luciferianism as being arranged according to a hierarchical structure which vaguely resembles a caste system. At the very top sit 13 family dynasties. These are recognized by the cult as demigods. Below these sit approximately 300 Luciferian bloodlines who are generally high IQ. Below this group sit the commoners who can never attain higher status because they lack the desired bloodline. These are your random covens based on nationality, sexual orientation, gang membership, and so on. It is from these lines that the cult obtains breeders, or women who are forced to breed unregistered babies for sacrifice and sex trafficking. I would add that these women are forced breeders only to the extent that they're not random women. These are Luciferians whose families have been involved in cults for generations. Since there's no birth record, there's no missing person report. It is common for certain Luciferian groups to kidnap their victims, usually infants and young children, from hospitals, orphanages, shopping centers, and off the streets. There's also information to support the idea that Luciferians operate child daycares and foster homes, a recent case being Keith Rainier of Nexium, who also founded the Rainbow Culture Garden, a worldwide network of 11 preschools. An older, well-known example was that of the McMartin preschool case. Because the allegations of abuse arose in the early 80s, it's easily dismissed today as part of the satanic panic, even though the media has convinced many it was fabricated, the same way the media of today reported about the WikiLeaks emails. There are some strange coincidences I want to address. In 1993, archaeologist Gary Stickle was hired to investigate tunnels and reported the findings of his dig on the preschool property. He concluded, quote, "There is no other scenario that fits all of the facts except that the feature was indeed a tunnel." Stickle and his associates found the tunnels at the time of the second trial of Ray Buckey, but the district attorney refused to use the evidence in the trial. The running narrative today is that the feature was not a tunnel at all, but a family's trash pit. That was hand-dug, mind you. This brings me to another infamous trial, the Menendez brothers. They were allegedly abused by their parents and killed them. Their father was a wealthy entertainment executive, and they lived in a house in Beverly Hills that had previously been owned by Elton John, Prince, and Michael Jackson. During the second trial, all of the brothers' backstory was removed, what the media called distractions, or the abuse excuse, and they were quickly convicted of murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Were Eric and Lyle also victims of ritual abuse? Their aunt supports this idea by saying, quote, "How would I feel if someone had abused me my whole life, and all of a sudden he's angry in front of me and he's coming to me? It's a defense mechanism we all have. You never knew what you would do." The reason I mention them is because the judge, Judge Weisberg, was a prominent judge in Los Angeles. This clip goes on to say that he had presided over the McMartin trial. He was also the presiding judge over the Rodney King beating trial of 4 officers that were accused of beating Rodney King. They were all acquitted. That sparked widespread riots and burning in Los Angeles. The LA riots, of course, being from April 29th to May 4th of 1992, which happens to fall over Beltane, when there were always fire sacrifices. Anyway, the judge ruled in the McMartin case not guilty. They ruled in the Rodney King trial not guilty, yet the Menendez brothers were guilty. Another well-known front for human trafficking is the Church of Scientology. As I mentioned earlier, it has been in the spotlight lately. Ann Wales was a member of the Church of Scientology, which practices trauma-based mind control and is a recruiting center for the OTO, or the Ordo Templi Orientis. Some of you may remember Peaches Geldof, her OTO tattoo, and her mysterious death, and the Process Church of the Final Judgment, which are both practicing total mind control in coordination with the dark occultists. This cult teaches Jehovah, the God of discipline and righteousness. He's also the God of war. Now, let me stop you right there. According to the book of Enoch in chapter 69, verse 6, it is not Jehovah who taught war, but Gadrael. Quote, "He it is who showed the children of men all the blows of death, and he led astray Eve, and showed the weapons of death to the sons of men, the shield and the coat of mail, and the sword for battle, and all the weapons of death to the children of men. And from his hand they have proceeded against those who dwell on the earth from that day and forevermore." Yahweh God is not a God of war or human sacrifice, as many wrongfully believe. The Process Church claims Lucifer is the God of love and light. He's a sensualist as well. According to the Process Church, he's the one responsible for the creation of women. Satan is the god of darkness, magic, and transcendence. And Christ, he's the emissary to the other gods. He's transcendental love. He was believed to come a second time in the end times when Jehovah and Satan declare war on humanity and destroy it. In the end, Christ and Satan will unite as one being and pass judgment on humanity. It is amazing the amount of time and effort they put into twisting and corrupting the character of Yahweh God. It proves how much of a threat the truth is to these Luciferians. Yahweh is so powerful that we need to be controlled deceitfully. Otherwise, we would easily overpower our manipulators. If so much deception, censorship, and mind control is needed to steer humanity away from God, it proves how frightened they are of us remembering the truth. They encroach, infiltrate, slaughter, captivate, and dominate. The reason? They refuse to accept death. Every act of acquisition is a step forward in trying to attain the seemingly unattainable: immortality. How fitting then that us believers have the very thing that Lucifer and his fallen angels will never have again: eternal life and the presence of Yahweh God. After Lucifer is bound for 1,000 years, he and his army are tormented in the lake of fire forevermore. Chapter 5. Black Magic versus the Bible. Q Post 1001 from April 3rd of 2018 shows a picture of Little St. James Island, better known as Epstein Island, and reads, each prince is associated with a cardinal direction: north, south, east, and west. Sacrifice, collect, tunnels. In LaVey Satanism, each of the 4 princes of hell are associated with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west, as well as the elements such as fire, earth, air, and water. Within mind control programming, each system has a compass built into it. The 4 demons in programming are called goddesses, and they control the 4 directions, which are called quarter regions. Colossians 2:8. See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. A Q post from August 28th of 2018 says, children are being kidnapped, tortured, raped, and sacrificed in the name of pure evil. What name might that be? Yahweh God is not the same bloodthirsty God that these people sacrifice to. Not only is that illogical, but he fought furiously against people who do sacrifice children. Just because the occult has hijacked something does not mean it belongs to them. Leviticus 18:21. You shall not give, meaning to sacrifice, any of your children to offer them to Moloch, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord.
The little ones that I was talking about first talked about throwing the babies in the fire. And I asked about that, and thinking they were dead, and then they threw them in the fire, and the littlest one said, no, them was alive, and them threw them, like this.
A book entitled The Jew, the Gypsy, and El Islam indicates that the Talmudic God is a blood-loving God, and not Yahweh God, the God of believers in his son Yahusha or Jesus Christ. Like all mystery religions, the Talmud is based off of the teachings of fallen angels.
My next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to, like, 1700.
And so you were...
Right. I was born into a family that believes in this.
And does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl?
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
Really?
I always thought
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to,
Whose babies?
There were people who bred babies in our family.
And the purpose of sacrifice is to what? Is to bring you what? What are you sacrificing for?
For power.
Uh-huh.
I've been told by people that know a lot more than I do that the reason for all of this death and murder is because of the belief in the demons and the power that they can get from that. And these people believe that the more innocent the victim, the more horrible the death, the closer you are at the moment of death, the more magic is released and the more spiritual power they get.
The rabbis teach and subsequently believe that the Talmud supersedes the Old Testament, meaning the teachings of the fallen override the Word of God. The Anons who answered the Q post identify, correctly, the reason for sacrifice is the god Moloch. Moloch being a widely worshipped Canaanite god, like Baal, who demands child sacrifices. When a couple sacrificed their firstborn, they believed that Moloch would ensure financial prosperity for the family and for future children. In North Africa, Moloch was renamed Kronos. Kronos is also known as Saturn. Moloch is associated with and sometimes equated to Baal, Baal being a Hebrew word for Lord. Jeremiah 23 verses 26 through 27 says, "How long shall there be lies in the heart of prophets who prophesy lies, and who prophesy the deceit of their own heart? Who think to make my people forget my name by their dreams that they tell one another, even as their fathers forgot my name for Baal." You've probably encountered people who revert back to Genesis 22:2 about Abraham when he was about to sacrifice Isaac. They lack the knowledge of the pagan rituals happening at that time. He said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you." Mount Moriah is where David decided to build God's temple, later built by Solomon. Today is where the Dome of the Rock is. What is truly fascinating here is that Moriah is one of the names that the establishment or the network still goes by to this day. This entire event took place in order for Yahweh to distinguish himself from Moloch. Unlike the Canaanite gods, Yahweh detests human sacrifice. He provided a lamb instead so that Isaac would be spared. The Canaanite gods never offer a stand-in. Of course, this whole ordeal was foreshadowing the coming of Yahusha or Jesus Christ. In our modern world, when we say things like Yahweh God gets angry at people for worshiping other gods, people my age imagine a bunch of little kids wearing flower crowns, having a great time burning incense to some beautiful marble goddess. That's not what was happening. Yahweh was never angry at letting humans exercise free will. He was furious at the method used to worship these bloodthirsty gods by literally murdering each other, including children. Oh yeah, and then eating them. Illuminati rituals are based upon the most ancient mystery religions. The Rothschilds like the ancient Canaanite mystery rituals and use Akkadian, Hittite, Canaanite, Babylonian rituals. The rituals from ancient Egypt are also heavily used. The Collins-Sinclair type Illuminati bloodlines and some of the other Illuminati families with a Northern European or Celtic background are very much into Druid rituals. Jeremiah 19:4. "Because the people have forsaken me and have profaned this place by making offerings in it to other gods whom neither they nor their fathers nor the kings of Judah have known, and because they have filled this place with the blood of innocents, and have built the high places of Baal to burn their sons in the fire as burnt offerings to Baal, which I did not command or decree, nor did it come into my mind."
Ritually sacrificed to Moloch. It was a fire ceremony that night, and that's what they like to do. They like to burn people alive, and they've got a gold platter, and they've got a chalice, and they collect the blood of the baby. They drain the baby's blood in the chalice, and then they chop the baby up and put it on the gold platter, and then they pass it around for Holy Communion. So it's the Black Mass, the real typical old-fashioned black Mass that the Catholic Mass is based on, right? The Catholic Mass the Latin Mass is a sanitized version of this. There's nothing Christian about Catholic Mass. This stage was lined with children who must have been about maybe 8, 9, 10 years of age, that sort of thing. And they had them lined up like this on the stage. They went like this. They lined the children up. And the children were hypnotized. And the children came forward and they were like this. They were just like this. They just, as they were told, they did nothing and they just stared straight ahead. He goes along, each child, and he has a certain stance about him. And he slices off the heads of each child. And he goes along and chops off each head. And each kid falls. The body just falls and blood is going everywhere.
Q-Drop 133 on 11/11 of 17 followed the bloodlines. Then it goes on to say, who worships Satan? What is a cult? Epstein Island. What is a temple? What occurs in a temple? Worship? Why is the temple on top of a mountain? How many levels might exist below? The Kabbalah and the Zohar are the fundamental books the most occult, magic, and satanic groups base their philosophies and actions on. Lilith's Cave is a Jewish folklore and mythological book that has plenty of allegories about their beliefs and practices.
There's a book that I had just come across called Lilith's Cave, which is a book of Jewish mysticism and supernatural, and there's a lot in that book that relates to what I, endured when I was a child.
One well-known magician, Alpheus Levi, wrote in his book Transcendental Magic, quote, "All truly dogmatic religions have issued from the Kabbalah and returned therein. Whatsoever is grand or scientific in the religious dreams of the illuminated, of Jacob Boehme, Swedenborg, St. Martin, and the rest, is borrowed from the Kabbalah. All Masonic associations owe to it their secrets and their symbols." Acts 7:43. "Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your god Ramphan, figures which ye made to worship them." The religion generally known as Judaism is not the Old Testament or Mosaic law practiced by the ancient Israelites. By around 600 BC, Jews had added the oral law, which is primarily rabbinic commentary, written down throughout the centuries. The combination of Torah and rabbinic law is called the Talmud. The Talmud has two versions: the Jerusalem Talmud, followed primarily by Palestinian Jews, and the Babylonian Talmud, which is considered by many to be the most authoritative of the two Talmuds. Just as the Synagogue of Satan are not the biological descendants of Israelites, and are imposters pretending to be Israelites, their religion only pretends to follow the Old Testament. Let me be clear, I am talking about esoteric ism, because they follow the teachings and commentary of rabbis, not the Word of God. In Yahushua's time, they were called the Pharisees. Our Messiah said that the religion of the Pharisees was doctrines of men, not the law of the Old Testament. Talking to the scribes and Pharisees, Jesus said, "Ye hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan." Speaking to the Jews of his day, Isaiah says, "But draw near hither, ye sons of the sorceress, the seed of the adulterer and the whore. Against whom do you sport yourself? Against whom do you make ye a wide mouth, and draw out the tongue? Are ye not children of transgression, a seed of falsehood? Inflaming yourselves with idols under every green tree, slaying the children in the valleys under the clefts of the rocks." Isaiah references this black magic ritual and the fact that here the children are slain under the cleft of the rocks. This refers to the Talmudic ban against burying Gentile children. The playbook that every single occult organization splintered off of is the Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. The Babylonian Talmud is to science what Kabbalah is to philosophy. The doctrines of this, and other secret societies are all rooted in this mysticism. Albert Pike, one of the most well-known leaders in the history of Freemasonry, said in his book Morals and Dogma that the source of the doctrine of Freemasonry and the Illuminati ultimately goes back to the Kabbalah, the Jewish book of occult knowledge. These groups are the ones carrying out ritual abuse and mind control. Those higher up in the hierarchy openly admit to worshiping Lucifer. However, they don't stop at just honoring Lucifer. There is careful and strategic purpose put on making a victim reject God. If Yahweh was not a threat, this would be unnecessary. And if Yahweh God was the evil Lord Baal or Moloch, this would be highly illogical. According to the testimony of Cisco Wheeler in the book The Deeper Insights to the Illuminati Formula, one of the first rituals a child born into the hierarchy endures is the powerful Tin Man ritual, in which they are presented to Lucifer, the god of light. The first ritual is to make sure the child victim experienced a staged rejection of God, where they are found to be unworthy in his book of life. The second ritual consists of a burial, death, and resurrection ritual. Sound familiar? In this ritual, to die means death towards God, burial means bury all that makes up a person's worth, and resurrection means to be resurrected with a new name and birthed to Lucifer. This is designed to remove any bonds the deeper altars might ever conceive of having with the Almighty God. The paradigm that there is no absolute truth is very important in Luciferianism. That way, every time a fragment of truth comes the victim's way, they will reject it. Occult philosophies, by their very nature, create a framework that makes it very difficult to understand when you've received real truth. and even harder to see the reality and the truth of Jesus Christ. Within days of the second ritual, they will follow with a mock satanic wedding. Usually, the father will marry his daughter, but there's a chain of responsibility, and if the father can't do this, then the grandfather is next in line, and then the uncle, and then the programmer. They will serve as the satanic covering for the child. At this point, the rejection by God is still fresh in the child's mind, and they want the child to at least remember the rejection. Whether they remember the incident or not depends. The child may have already dissociated the previous week or two, so the programmer may simply tell it, "Remember the fear when God didn't love you." The purpose of this programming is extensive. There are many different types of mind control slaves created for specific purposes. The severe rituals are important to create cold-hearted killers, such as our country's serial killers, infamous murderers, assassins, or Delta programs within a system, or a victim with multiple alters. A friendly front alter may not be aware that they have a Delta alter. Dr. Ken Magid, a clinical psychologist who specializes in the treatment of severely abused children, understood that children so traumatized in their first few years of life do not bond with other people. Some lack consciousness who can hurt or kill without remorse. Others don't need programming to sacrifice humans, because they naturally have no remorse. Even worse, programmers use their mind control slaves to carry out murders so that the perpetrators are actually not to blame, even though they are responsible. Light occultists and dark occultists alike believe in the 7 or 8 hermetic laws they call natural law. Hermetic being from Hermeticism, and if you guys remember from the Saint Germain deception, Hermes was most likely an incarnation or channel for Saint Germain, or, in my opinion, Lucifer. One of the laws deals with karmic consequence. The reason these dark occultists believe they can literally get away with murder and extreme depravity is through karmic deflection. This is where their programmed slaves and the cult members come in. The very top-tier occultists are generally not the ones performing the actions. They believe this protects them from karma and that their slaves bear the brunt of it. Some deeper layers or programs are given the name Yahweh Elohim, so when they hear that name, they associate it with their master, or a demon programmer or alter. Cisco goes on to say, the programming has 3 basic foundations: fear, rejection of God, which in turn is a rejection of who they truly are, and entrapment by demonic forces. If the person is paralyzed in fear, unable to seek God's help, unable to know who they are in Christ and to see God's plan for their life, and lives in demonic bondage, then the Illuminati programming will hold.
Point of trauma-based mind control is to re-traumatize the victim to keep their trauma-based programming intact.
The Word of God states that each person is intricately designed by God and developed according to His plan, in Psalm 139, verses 14 through 16. A person's self-image of who they are profoundly affects everything else about them. The occultists want to ensure that the potential for good that the person is born with is destroyed or controlled. They want the victim to feel rejected and cheated by God. This is why it's important to the programmers that their deeper alters are programmed not to be able to hear or read the Word of God. The programmer will be looking for ways to open up the victim to demonic influences, and he will be setting up scenarios so that the victim rejects the Spirit of God in their life. Human sacrifice and cannibalism are not new, but very ancient. It happened before the flood, and thanks to Nimrod, the king of Babylon, it still happens today. There are many places in the Old Testament where Yahweh warns the Hebrews not to worship other gods. He even predicted what would happen if they do. Deuteronomy 12, verses 30 through 32 says, "Take heed to thyself that thou be not snared by following them. After that they be destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, How did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord, which he hateth, have they done unto their gods, for even their sons and daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods." Leviticus 26, verses 27 through 31 says, "And if ye will not for all this hearken unto me, but walk contrary unto me, then I will walk contrary unto you also in fury. And I, even I will chastise you 7 times for your sins. And ye shall eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters shall ye eat. And I will destroy your high places, and cut down your images, and cast your carcasses upon the carcasses of your idols, and my soul shall abhor you." Notice that in verse 29, Yahweh doesn't say he will make them eat their young. They do that on their own. Yahweh is telling them what will happen to them if they choose to follow these gods. In Micah 3, verses 1 through 3, Micah addresses the elite heads of families and the justice officials. These magistrates and judges seem to have been chiefly members of the royal family, at least in Judah. Micah describes the savage behavior of the ruling class leaders, and they are warned that they themselves are under judgment for what they've done. Quote, "Is it not for you to know judgment, who hate the good and love the evil, who pluck off their skin from off of them, and their flesh from off their bones, who also eat the flesh of my people and flay their skin from off of them, and they break their bones and chop them in pieces, as for the pot, and his flesh within the cauldron."
And he said they cooked that baby on the grill. Oh my.
It is where I witnessed the most heinous human sacrifice of all time, and the most difficult one to process and talk about in therapy. And that is the flaying of a boy who was about 5, little blonde boy. Anthony Kidman and 4 other men were dressed in multicoloured robes, according to the pentagram, his coven. And so they're multicoloured robes that I've drawn. They crucified him and flayed his skin and pinned it back. And then they strung him up over. Once they'd done it, they did it to him alive. Once they'd finished that, they strung him up over the stage of the Great Hall.
Who performed the fetal Eucharist, which is the actual drinking of the blood and eating or cannibalizing the child or the newborn or the abortus.
There are many more examples in the Bible where Yahweh God warns of the judgment that is to come to people who do harm children. Luke 17:2. "It were better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck and he cast into the sea, than that he should offend one of these little ones." Matthew 18:6. "But whosoever causes one of these little ones who believed in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea." This practice goes by many names, but in the end, it all comes back to Mystery Babylon, the teachings of the fallen angels. The elite have controlled humanity since the fall. Yahusha came not only to save us, but to show us who we're fighting against. Yahweh God isn't the one to blame. He is our way out, our path to freedom. This world is Lucifer's playground, and we're not playing nice anymore. No Nephilim spirits, curses, or demonic influences have any authority over the living word of God. We know that the only one who can eliminate this evil and bring justice is Yahusha or Jesus Christ. Weird transition, but in case this channel gets taken down, I have made a BitChute account that I'll also leave a link to in the description below. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. I'm sure it wasn't fun. I'll leave you with another one of my favorite Bible verses. Take care and stay safe. Bye.